Good evening and welcome to Hatching for Health with your host, Jessica Hatch. We are joined tonight by a gentleman by the name of Steve Austin, and he has a lovely organization that he started just shy of about 2 years ago known as Living Hope Chaplaincy. So we are going to learn all about it and the things that they are doing in the various hospital systems around Houston. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to connect, and I'm glad you're able to make it out and be a part of tonight's episode.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I know that you're a pastor as well as holding this organization. You're a pastor at Lakewood Church, is that right?
Correct, yes.
So, I mean, I don't know if you could do any more. You know, that's a huge honor, as well as the amount of people that I'm sure you're helping just doing that, you know. So what made you, I guess, want to do even more by going as far as opening this organization?
So I've been a pastor for 20 years. Before that, I was an attorney. I practiced law for 8 years and went into full-time ministry in 2000. And I've been doing hospital ministry for those 20 years, you know, along with a lot of other ministry at the church. I've overseen numerous ministries at Lakewood, but hospital ministry has always been a passion of mine.
Yeah.
I just love, you know, going and encouraging patients in the hospital. And I noticed, you know, over those years that there were organizations that were ministering to other faith groups like Catholics and Jewish people, Presbyterians, Church of Christ, you know, those different faith groups.
Okay.
But there wasn't an organization ministering to non-denominational patients.
Yeah.
And, you know, I noticed that a lot of the non-denominational patients just weren't getting spiritual care. These hospitals have staff chaplains, but for example, MD Anderson has 10 staff chaplains for 650 beds.
Oh my goodness.
So
nearly not enough, you know,
right,
based on the amount of people that probably, you know, want to have that encouragement of the Lord and have somebody coming in there, at least on a even small basis, you know, much more.
Exactly. So the staff chaplains are great. They do a fantastic job, but they're just spread so thin. They don't get to, you know, a lot of these non-denominational patients I just noticed were not getting hardly any spiritual care.
Yeah, I can imagine. So just for like the viewers to kind of fully understand, because, you know, I know we were talking before we started. So a chaplain is, you know, what we would consider a pastor just within a hospital. Is that right? Okay.
Right.
And so a lot of these facilities, they have chaplains that are actually like employed by the hospital systems.
Right.
But they're limited, it sounds like, by like the numbers you just spoke of.
Right.
And then the ones that they do have that are from outside organizations, it's just been a lot of other denominations. The non-denomination hasn't really been a part of these hospitals, like you mentioned, Bentob, Memorial Hermann, Texas Children's. I mean, these are the biggest hospitals in Houston and really biggest hospitals in a lot of the country.
Yes.
And so not to have that, you know, that's huge. So how were you able to, I guess, build that relationship to be able to have your organization in them?
Yes, that's a great question. So over that 20 years that I've been ministering in the hospitals, you know, I've gotten to know a lot of the top people in the medical center. And one day I was having a conversation with a spiritual care director at MD Anderson, and I asked her, I said, you know, her name is Gail Kinnerbrew. She's a great friend of mine. And I said, Gail, I noticed that, you know, there's an organization ministering to Catholic patients and one for Presbyterians, one for Jewish, and one for Church of Christ, but there's none for non-denominational patients. And I said, how could I start something like that?
Yeah.
And she said, well, you know, and she told me how. She said you'd have to form a 501c3 and it would have to be approved by the hospital. And I had to go through chaplaincy training to be able to oversee the organization. So,
and did that take place like with, I guess, hospital and, you know, employees that actually go through that training with you? Like a special team that, you know, that trains the other chaplains?
Yes. So these big hospitals, I did my training at MD Anderson, but all the big hospitals like Memorial Hermann and Methodist and all those
Yeah.
have a chaplaincy training program.
Okay.
And so I just happened to pick MD Anderson because my, Gail Kennebrew that I mentioned earlier is kind of my mentor. And so it was an intense training. I had, 12-hour shifts and, still being a pastor at Lakewood, but also going through this training. And I ministered to hundreds of cancer patients during that time.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And so do you essentially end up with a certificate that allows you then to go to other hospitals? And okay, so that's that one certificate, whether it's from there or these other systems.
Right. Correct.
It kind of like an attorney, like you can, practice law amongst, anywhere. It gives you that same kind of a credibility. Okay. Very good. So then that, once you had that, so that must have been obviously the first hospital that you really, built that rapport with, or started this, being able to actually take Living Hope and turn it into reality.
Yes.
So are these children all the way up to, the elderly, or is there any kind of age that y'all focus on?
No, it's, we're hoping to be in Texas Children's as well. So just children all the way up to elderly, like you said.
Yeah.
Just, anybody who's in hospitals. And, just to give you an idea, the numbers, our medical center in Houston is the largest in the world. And we have 10 million patient visits just in our medical center every year.
Goodness.
10 million patient visits per year. In the Texas, and that doesn't include all the regional hospitals. That's just the medical center. So there's a staggering number of people coming to our medical center from all over the world. So this is just an incredible opportunity to minister to people all over the world coming to our medical center.
Yeah, for the type of care that we offer. So when you're able to go into a room and know that, okay, this patient is, under that non-denominational, is that some type of patient paperwork that they filled out upon, okay. So that's released to you guys.
Correct.
And then it's at, liberty for you to go into these different rooms.
Yes.
Should they want to visit with someone.
Right, exactly. And that's why we had to form the 501c3.
Okay.
Because what you're talking about, it's called a census. So every patient fills out a census when they're admitted, and it has all their information, and they say, if they have a religious affiliation, and whether they're, Catholic or Presbyterian or non-denominational. Yeah. And then, but that's confidential information. Only hospital staff get to see that.
Okay.
But I will my organization will have access to that list because we form this 501c3 and we have what's called a memorandum of understanding with each hospital. Okay. So it's a contract that we sign with them. Okay. And, it's a contractual relationship, and they allow us to have a copy of that confidential list.
Yeah, and be able to, that makes complete sense. I mean, there wouldn't really be any other way to do it. You couldn't just go door to door. Hey, do you, what religion are you? Do you want us to pray with you? Yeah. So you really have to have it organized, especially in the type of hospitals that you're, stepping foot in and helping.
Yes.
I mean, those numbers are, the amount of people, constantly coming in. And you had mentioned some numbers a while ago. You were saying, even like on a daily basis, about 650 people being admitted amongst those 7 hospitals? Yeah,
about 700 non-denominational patients per day in just the medical center, and that's not outpatients. There's thousands and thousands of outpatients, people coming and getting their like chemo treatment and things
dialysis,
like that.
Things where they're just
correct
in and out, but
there's
they're coming back.
Thousands and thousands of those, but there's about 700 non-denominational inpatients per day in the medical center.
That y'all are going to get a chance to share the word with.
Right.
And it just, that's going to take, a really large team. I know, being that you guys are about, 2 years Well, really a year. I mean, early on, it sounds like you got the 501c granted.
Right.
And you've kind of been, a little bit hindered by COVID.
Right.
But how has that been, like, finding the volunteers and the team to put in place?
Well, COVID has been a challenge
Yeah.
for sure. We got our 501c3 status right before COVID hit. So we were ready to launch, and then COVID hit, and all those hospitals shut down to outside visitors. And,
You're like,
yeah.
You're like, this is exactly what we don't need to happen. Yeah.
But actually, it was a blessing in disguise, because it allowed me to. I've taken this period during COVID and really built the infrastructure.
I bet.
Like the training, the
time that you would
website.
never find,
Right.
or that you would allow yourself to, like, you'd be like, no, there's too many other things hands-on I need to be with at the church,
Right.
with like helping individuals. Yeah. And you're like,
Yes.
I have to be afar.
Exactly.
So what can I, do to build this out?
Yes.
So you're right. It probably uniquely enough, for you in particular has been, a blessing.
Yes.
In that, different kind of way. For those that, want to volunteer and like what they're hearing and they want to participate, like, how would they find you? Would they go onto the website, or
So we have a great website. It's www.livinghopechaplaincy.
Okay.
And I'm going to spell chaplaincy because a lot of people aren't familiar with that word. It's CHAPLAINCY.
Okay.
And for people that aren't familiar with that word, the reason I put that word chaplaincy in the name is because inside hospitals, patients know what chaplains are, because they have staff chaplains.
Okay, so
and they know what that word means. And so it kind of gives you credibility when you go into patients' rooms saying, I'm with Living Hope Chaplaincy.
Makes, complete sense.
So livinghopechaplaincy.org is the website.
Okay.
And people can go on there, and there's a form online that they can fill out to volunteer.
That is great. That'll be awesome for those that are listening and want to be able to volunteer. They can go right to the site, fill that form out. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll learn a little bit more with Steve Austin when we come back. How would you like to see your commercial on the Hatching for Health episode each and every Tuesday evening? If that's you, please email me at info@hatchingforhealth.org, and we can tell you about all the fabulous ways to see your commercial on our episodes. And don't forget, we're a 501c, so any contribution is 100% tax deductible. We look forward to hearing from you. Diagnosed with a scary sounding disease can be frightening. Imagine what it's like for your child. There are over 7,000 rare diseases around the world affecting children. Join me, Jessica Hatch, along with leading experts to help break down medical lingo, explain why and what their little bodies are feeling. Real faces, real stories, and expert advice. And you can watch us on the biggest South Asian TV network in North America, NTV Houston. Welcome back to the Hatching for Health show. We are joined by Steve Austin with Living Hope Chaplaincy. And I want to talk about what inspired you, because you've been on quite a journey going from a law degree to entering into these hospitals as, really just a constant testimonial to them and talking about the Word of God, to becoming a full-time pastor, but then branching in, taking all of that experience. What was it that was like, this is what I want to do next?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think our calling finds us.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like what you're doing. You just you feel a certain pull or a tug towards something, and a passion for something. And you know, that was me with hospital patients. I just, you know, as a pastor, one of the many things that I've been called to do is go and visit patients in the hospital, and I just felt such a passion for that, like more than a lot of the other things I was doing.
Really?
I just have a heart for hurting people, and especially for really all hurting people. I just really, my heart goes out to hurting people, but especially hospital patients.
Yeah.
And so I've done it for 20 years, you know, visiting people in the hospitals. And so this organization, Living Hope Chaplaincy, is just to take it to a whole nother level.
Exactly, because you're one person, and so when you know, take your time and the amount of visits that you can, you know, obviously produce with these various, you know, individuals, families, you can only do it, you know, so much on your own. So you're just basically creating numbers that would be, you know, unlimited to the number of people wanting to help and volunteer.
Yes.
So I think that's huge. You know, I've never, you know, personally got the opportunity to, I guess, kind of pray with a stranger. I bet that's really special. You know, I'm big on prayer within, you know, my personal family and friends, and when something's going on and someone's like, hey, say a prayer, like I always handle it very interesting. I respond to them with a prayer written, and then I say it after I've sent it, you know, and it kind of like takes that moment, because I've, you know, grown up a bit of a worry, I feel like sometimes, and it's like, but you know what God says, like, you know, pray about it and let that worry go, you know, because it's in His hands at that point. You've done what you can do.
Yes.
But just to constantly, like, you know, have the heart that you have to go time and time and hear their pain and what they're going through, and, you know, and lift them up and then go to the next. I mean, that takes a special person. So I commend you, you know. You're making me want to cry.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it makes me, I love to volunteer just to kind of experience that. And I'm sure that they're so grateful. Like, you know, maybe they didn't grow up in a praying family, or, you know, being able to be a part of what a church has to offer. So I think just, you know, knowing someone like you cares and is like taking that time out, you know, probably goes really far.
Yeah, you know, when a person gets a diagnosis with, you know, of a serious illness, you know, it just throws their whole life upside down. You know, they all of a sudden they're thrown into this spin cycle of, you know, doctor's visits and tests and all this stuff. And, you know, then, you know, if they have something really serious like cancer, you know, then they have to go through chemo, and they might be in the hospital for months. I mean, there are people, all kinds of people that I minister to that have been in hospitals for months.
Yeah.
And, you know, their whole lives have been disrupted. They're away from their home, their family, their friends, their church. They have no privacy. They have medical people poking and prodding on them all day, you know, and at night. And so, but they don't have hardly anybody to just, you know, talk to and just talk about their feelings or talk about what they're going through spiritually. And so they really do appreciate it, you know, when we come and we just listen and we encourage, and it's somebody besides a doctor with a medical test or something, you know, it's somebody that just cares about them as an individual and is listening to their feelings, their emotions, what they're going through, and, you know, is willing to encourage them and pray for them. Yeah.
So is that time spent, is it limited, or do you guys, you know, do you kind of go into that room with the purpose of like, you know, I want to learn about what's going on and pray with them? Is it, hey, you've got to be out in 30 minutes? I'm just curious if if there's kind of limitations to that time.
No, there's really no time limit on it. We, you know, as far as the hospital is concerned, but you have to have discernment with the patient, because some patients, you know, are just so sick and weak and everything that you don't want to wear out your welcome by staying a long time. But then there's other patients that are really just lonely, you know.
Just latch on to that moment. And
you'd be amazed at how many people are in hospitals and they don't have hardly anybody coming to see them, and they're just lonely.
Yeah.
And so, or they're just going through something emotionally, and you may have to spend an hour or more with somebody like that. You know, just let them get things off their chest and talk to you and listen to them, and so we kind of gauge the situation, what's needed.
So y'all sound like a little bit more than just a pastor. Like you're, kind of providing almost therapy. That's to get that one-on-one time, right? Usually, as a pastor, you kind of do a sermon, and you may pray with a few people after, but to go in there, and, you almost become a counselor for them, and
indeed.
And so they kind of get a lot of I guess a lot of benefits out of that time spent.
It's really frontline ministry. It's people that are, you're ministering to people at really their worst situation. Outside of the death of a loved one, going through a serious illness is the worst trial that anybody will face in their lives, and so it's a sacred moment, that we take very seriously, and it's just a blessing to me to be able to minister to people in those situations where they need it the most.
Of course. Well, I know with any children, of course, our main goals are kind of just that hatching for health term. It's kind of the younger children out there, if there's opportunities where we can connect with them and help in certain ways. I know a lot of times when they're in the hospital, they're blessed to have been there getting the care they need. Usually whether it's their insurance coverage, or I know you work with Bentov as well, which is a hospital that pretty much takes anybody regardless of what insurance they do or do not have.
Right.
And so name the hospitals that y'all are currently partnered up with and able, once everything opens back up, that y'all will be available to help with.
So the hospitals that we will be in the medical center are MD Anderson, Methodist Hospital, St. Luke's, Memorial Hermann, Bentov, the VA.
And the VA,
And Texas, did I mention Texas Children's?
Yeah, so that one's all.
So the 7 big hospitals in the medical center.
Okay.
We'll have teams in all of those hospitals, and then once we get all of those teams situated in all those hospitals, which will take about 150 volunteers. To have all those teams. Then we will start to put teams in the big regional hospitals.
Okay.
So
some of the same chains of those hospitals,
correct,
just maybe in like Woodlands or Sugar Land.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because they're all pretty spread out, and now Texas Children's has campuses like Katy. Don't they have quite a few campuses now too?
Yeah.
So the 150 volunteers are going to start out with the medical center.
Just the medical center,
and then you'll have to have even more.
Correct. Yeah. So we're raising up an army of volunteers. So if anybody is interested and they feel like they have a heart for hurting people and for hospital patients,
then they're going to go to Living Hope Chaplaincy, and that's CHAPLAINCY.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
.org. So that's great. It is a mouthful, but I definitely understand why you wanted that word on there.
Yes.
It just kind of capitalizes exactly what you're there to do.
Yes.
Of course. So tell me a little bit about your family. So you guys are all Houston, like born and raised here?
My wife was born and raised in Houston, and she and I have been married. It'll be 26 years this February.
That's amazing.
So,
congrats. Yeah,
and we have 2 daughters, a 22-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Great. Very good. So are they involved in any way with the organization?
Not really.
Really?
They, outside of just supporting me and praying for me and everything, but they're a little young yet to get involved.
Yeah.
But But yeah, I have a great family and
Yeah, wonderful support.
Oh
and
yeah, just the best.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way with anything you're doing, having that, partner, and then obviously children. I'm sure they look up to all the things that you're doing. And I think you mentioned your daughter just graduated from college.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was her degree in?
She got a degree in public relations.
Okay.
With a double minor in advertising and digital strategies.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, she was like, let's just keep putting
Yeah.
some names on that.
Yes.
That should be great. I'm sure Houston has a lot of opportunity. And the youngest one you said is how old?
16.
16.
Yes.
Okay.
So y'all pray for me.
Yeah, really, man. 2 girls.
I have
and, yeah.
2 girls and a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it has been so nice visiting with you, Steve. Like you mentioned, I think that we connected for a reason, to be able to to share your organization with Hatching for Health and those in the Houston area. So I love that you're able to come out, and I thank you for everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that concludes our episode. We hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next Tuesday at 7:30.